Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Isiah. In today's show, we'll look back at the best games over the last few days that I made predictions on last podcast. It didn't go well for me, to say the least. We'll check in on a little beef between two of the league's biggest stars. We'll take a look at the playoff picture for the Western Conference regarding the Grizzlies. We'll break down the Sixers and Clippers game that was a lot closer than expected. We'll talk a little bit about Bradley Beal and Porzingis having some impressive nights before we finish the show with who's hot and who's not. Now, like I said, we're going to talk about the predictions that I had last podcast for the last few games over the last couple of days that were just some of the bigger games happening in the NBA. The first one that we're going to talk about happened on Friday. It was the Clippers versus the Nuggets. This is a great matchup. We're going to start off with this one because it's the only good news regarding my predictions. I got this one right. A little bit of a spoiler alert. The Nuggets had won the last matchup, 114-104 on January 12th. Looking to build off of that and looking to further their cushion in second place because these two teams were separated by just one game going into this one. There were no injuries, which is not often for the Clippers. Only 6 times this happened before this game started, so this is the 7th time total that they've had a full healthy roster this season, which is crazy to think of. The Clippers have a home record of 23-6 and a road record for the Nuggets at 17-11. So given that information, given the fact that the Clippers were fully healthy, I went with the Los Angeles Clippers, and I said this could be a big turning point for them in their season. A lot of the players had addressed it. The coach, Doc Rivers, also addressed it, saying that because of the fact that they haven't been healthy, they haven't been able to get any type of rhythm really moving forward. And it's about that time where they're turning the corner towards the playoffs, and they want to get as high of a seed as possible and get as much team chemistry and rhythm going heading into the playoffs. So I thought this would be a really good point for them to do so against the Denver Nuggets, who are currently ahead of them in the standings. So I felt like they would really get up for this game. A little bit of a side note, Leonard gave away Clippers backpacks to fans at Staples Center before this game, and he encouraged them all to fill the bags with food, books, gifts, or another charitable donation that they had in mind before giving it to someone in need. I thought this was a really cool way for him to try and get some charity going, not just from him, but to encourage other people to do so as well. So he was giving away the backpacks, but was also encouraging them to give them to someone else who may need them by also filling it with some supplies that they might need as well. So really cool of Kawhi to be doing that before this game. And then heading into this game, I couldn't have predicted the final score, honestly. I did go with the Clippers, but I did not expect a blowout, and that's exactly what it was. The final score in this one was 132-103 for the Los Angeles Clippers. The Clippers never at one point trailed in this game. It was the worst loss of the season for the Denver Nuggets. I think, in my opinion, this was a statement win. They're tied for second record-wise as of right now. The Nuggets still occupy that second place, probably because of matchups or how they've done so far against the Clippers this season. But it's a statement win for the Clippers. Now that they're fully healthy, they've shown what they can truly do. LA is 12-1 when hitting at least 15 three-pointers, and in this game they hit 18. Paul George had 24 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. Not a bad performance. Thought he might pad the stat sheet just a little bit more than that. Kawhi Leonard had 19 points, 2 rebounds, 5 assists with 2 steals. Pretty quiet game for him. Harrell had 18 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists with 3 blocks for a double-double. And then Lou Williams had 17 points, 2 rebounds, 7 assists. Always a great addition coming off the bench. Always brings that spark and offensive edge to him. And then Reggie Jackson, newly acquired player after the Detroit Pistons bought him out. Clippers brought him over. He had a rough go in his first game, but in this one he played really well all around. Had 10 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. So this was just a really good team effort. It showed the depth. It showed what the Clippers are capable when all of their players are available. And Denver coach Mike Malone said, quote, "I would just say the overall fight from beginning to end. I thought we were soft tonight from beginning to end. We couldn't run offense because they took us out of our stuff. They're a good team, but I'm just very disappointed with our competitive spirit and effort." Monte Morris also had this to say. He said, quote, "We held each other accountable in the locker room, just saying we got punked. If we want to take that next step, games like this, we've got to be ready to play. The coaches only can do so much. Will Barton had a good speech for us for about 5 minutes. It was just about how teams think we're soft and think if they get into us, they can disorient anything we do. And they did that tonight," end quote. So, obviously, from the Nuggets standpoint, this is a shocking loss. They're in second place in the Western Conference, been very competitive for the most part. And to lose to a team that's behind you in the standings right now, you want to hold on to that second place as badly as they did, not a good sign for them at all. Jokic played pretty well, though. He had 21 points, 9 rebounds. Jeremy Grant off the bench was the next highest scorer with 20 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 steals and 1 block. So he did pretty well all around. Barton had 18 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, but the problem was that Jamal Murray, players like that, only had 11 points, 5 of 12 shooting, so no more double-digit scoring after Murray at 11. Millsap had no points in this one, and Harris had 4. So your true stars that usually show up in big moments didn't really show up in this game. Got shut out by a Clippers team that is looking to build on that and looking to gain some momentum going forward. The next game we talked about was the Heat versus the Mavericks. The Heat had been slipping at this point, playing kind of poorly, dropping some games that they probably shouldn't have been losing, and giving up big leads. And in this game, they wouldn't have Hero or Myers Leonard. Miami has a 23-4 home record, whereas Dallas has a 20-9 road record. So I ended up going with the Mavericks, and I'm starting to wonder why, because I look back at that home record, 23-4, and even though that the Heat had been struggling up until this point, I had to realize they were going to get it back on track at some point. So I underestimated the ability of the Heat. Thought that they had been playing pretty well, so I went with the Mavericks, who in turn have been playing pretty decent as of late. And it came back to bite me. In this game, the Heat won 126-118 on Luka Doncic's birthday, spoiling it for him. And similar to the last few games, for the last 5 games actually, the Heat had blown double-digit leads in all of them. But in the third, getting outscored 38-25, they responded by outscoring the Mavericks 38-25 themselves to take the win. Luka was playing hurt. He had an aching thumb. He started out 2 from 9 from the field and said obviously it didn't feel right. When your thumb's messed up, it's going to affect how you play. He still finished with 23 points, 4 rebounds, 10 assists, but he was not the top scorer for the Mavericks in this game. Seth Curry had a career-high night. 37 points on 13 of 15 shooting. He is related to Stephen Curry after all. I mean, I don't think he gets enough attention in the league. I mean, you're hyping up players like Caruso, but you never really talk about what Seth Curry has been doing coming off the bench. He's really thrived here at the Dallas Mavericks, and he's playing really well. We'll talk a little bit more about him later. Porzingis in this one had 24 points, 13 rebounds for a pretty good double-double. And then Hardaway Jr. had 15 points. But the Heat, they just had more depth to them in this game. 16 points from the entire Mavericks bench versus Dragic coming off the bench for the Heat, having 16 of his own just like that. Jimmy Butler had 26 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists to lead the Heat. Duncan Robinson had 24 points and 5 rebounds. Nunn had 16 points. Adebayo had 14 points and 11 rebounds for a quiet double-double. And Olynyk coming off the bench as well. 13 points, 7 rebounds, 9 assists. So a pretty good stat night for him. Heat won that one. So obviously I got that prediction wrong. Next game up was Saturday. Rockets versus Celtics. This was a huge game. I thought it was going to be a full-on bloodbath, and that's exactly what it was. Unstoppable force in Westbrook meeting an unstoppable force in Jason Tatum. These two teams are playing at a very high level at this point. Rockets are 17-12 away, but they were on a 5-game winning streak coming into this, whereas Boston were 8-2 in their last 10. Had 23-5 home record, so I ended up going with Boston. Boston can play small. They can match up pretty well with Houston. They didn't have Kemba Walker, which I think was a big problem for them down the stretch. But I went with Boston. This game was absolutely insane, but at the end of the day, small ball prevailed. The Rockets won the game. The game was forced to OT by Jaylen Brown after an intentional missed free throw from Jason Tatum got kicked out to Brown, and he hit a very clutch three-pointer to send this one to OT. But from there, it was just all Rockets, and it was tough to see because Boston really focused all their efforts on on James Harden, whereas they didn't really focus much on Russell Westbrook, and he was the one that hurt them. Houston ended up winning this game 111-110. And in this game, Russell Westbrook had 41 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, with 3 steals. His last 7 games, he's had 41 points, 39, 36, 21, 34, 33, and 41 points. Only one of those games has resulted in a loss. He's been shooting 57.2% from the field and 43.8% from three-point land. I've never seen Russell Westbrook shoot this accurate, be this efficient. James Harden kind of struggled in this one. He did manage 21 points, had 4 rebounds and 8 assists, but he shot 7 for 24 from the field and 4 for 17 from three-point land. But he also had 3 steals, so he kind of made up for it a little bit on the defensive end. Covington had a really big game, had 16 points, 16 boards, and 3 blocks. So him being that small ball center is working pretty well so far. Like I said, Celtics didn't have Kemba Walker. This is the 5th straight game without him, so obviously not good to not have your star point guard in. Jason Tatum led the way, per usual, with 32 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. So he really stuffed the stat sheet there. Marcus Smart, probably starting in place of Kemba Walker, scored 26 points, had 5 boards, 7 assists, and 4 steals. So he had a really great game. Jaylen Brown had 22 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. And then Gordon Hayward had 18 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists with 3 steals. So their top stars performed really well. But at the end of the day, Russell Westbrook just went off, and it was too much for the Celtics to handle. And so I got that prediction wrong too. And then lastly, I got the last prediction wrong as well. Sunday, the Lakers faced the Pelicans again for a rematch. I was excited for this one after the Lakers had won the first one. LeBron had a 40-point game. It's crazy. Lakers are obviously the best team in the West. They were on a 6-game win streak, 8-2 in their last 10. They played the Warriors before the Pelicans, so a nice little confidence boost there. And they're 23-5 on the road, so they they win whether or not they're at home or not. It doesn't matter. The Pelicans, on the other hand, are 11-17 at home, and they're actually a team that's better on the road, which is weird to me. There really weren't any injuries coming into this game, so going Lakers, given all that information, was a smart decision, but I had faith in the Pelicans, and they failed me again. They had the lead going to the 4th, but LeBron got up for the game again. He just rise to the occasion. There's actually a nice moment during this one. Zion had cut to the basket, slammed it down, and then LeBron went the other way and pulled up from super deep, Steph Curry range, and knocked down a 3. So it was a nice little run of play between those two, really emphasizing the matchup. In this game, the Lakers actually didn't even have Anthony Davis. He sat out after playing against the Warriors, just needed a day off. But in this game, LeBron really stepped up to the plate again. He had a monster triple-double, 34 points, 12 rebounds, 13 assists with 2 steals. So that's his 21st triple-double with the Lakers, which ties Kobe for 3rd most in the franchise. He's only played 2 seasons with the Lakers, which I think is crazy for him to even be on this all-time list just like that. Kyle Kuzma performed really well in Anthony Davis' absence, had 20 points, 4 rebounds. And then KCP had 13 points. And then Bradley, Green, and Morris all had 10 points for the Lakers. And McGee had 6 blocks. to go with 8 points, but 6 blocks. So he was protecting the rim really well in this one. Zion Williamson had a career-high night again. 35 points this time. 7 rebounds to lead all scorers in the game. So a monster performance for him. He really got out for this one. Lonzo Ball played a great game as well. Almost got a triple-double. Had 19 points, 9 rebounds, 9 assists with 3 steals. Brandon Ingram was a little bit disappointing for me. He had 15 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. And then Derek Favors had a quiet double-double with 12 points and 14 rebounds. But at the end of the day, it was the Lakers who took the game. And the Pelicans are now 0-2 with Zion playing against the Los Angeles Lakers. So coming up next, we talk about some back and forth between two big stars in the NBA. Some feelings may have been hurt, some things were said, and one of the two has responded with some monster performances. Stay with us.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. We just talked about some of the bigger games that happened over the last couple of days in the NBA. We talked about the Clippers versus the Nuggets. Obviously, the Clippers winning that one pretty big. We talked about the Heat versus the Mavericks. The Heat beating the Mavericks. The Heat are just such a great home team. It's really tough to beat them, even if they're not playing well at the time. We talked about the Rockets and the Celtics, which was an absolute bloodbath. These two teams, great offensively, great coming into this game, both on win streaks, both playing really well. But it was the Rockets who eventually won the game in overtime due to Russell Westbrook just going off, had 41 points in that one. And then the rematch between the King and Zion Williamson. LeBron came out on top again, had a great triple-double performance. 21st triple-double with the Lakers. That ties Kobe for third most in the franchise. So very impressive performances. Not impressive performance for me in terms of my predictions, but I'll make up for it later this week. And now we're going to transition a little bit. James Harden and Giannis Antetokounmpo. I've had a little bit of beef the last couple of days. Giannis, during All-Star break, he kind of made a little bit of a joke when picking his team about James Harden. He was mulling over his idea of who to pick, and the analysts that were watching it live were saying it's an obvious choice, go James Harden, whatever. And he said, I want to pick somebody that's going to pass the ball. So he didn't want to pick James Harden, alluding to that fact, and he ended up picking Kemba Walker. But apparently, James Harden ended up seeing this, obviously, and got his feelings kind of hurt, I guess. He said, quote, I wish I could just run and was 7 feet and run and just dunk. Like, that takes no skill at all. I got to actually learn how to play basketball, how to have skill, I'd take that any day. Are you kidding me? James Harden is trying to say that because Giannis is 7 feet tall and he can dunk on anybody, that takes no skill at all. And that's pretty much all Giannis' game. That's pretty much what he's alluding to. Giannis is 7 feet tall. That much is true. He can dunk on anybody. That much is true. But that's not all of what Giannis does. He has such a great skill set for somebody his size. I mean, the next best person is Kevin Durant, and he's nowhere near as much as a physical presence as Giannis is in terms of getting to the basket and finishing on top of opponents. He does have a great turnaround jumper, just like Dirk, a really high release point and fadeaway that's almost impossible to stop. He's got great footwork around the post, getting into the rim. And now he's starting to shoot from three-point land too. So you can't say that Giannis doesn't work on his craft, doesn't have a bunch of skill set and different tools in order to be one of the most dangerous players in the NBA. I mean, there's a reason why he was MVP last season, and he's going to be MVP again this season. I mean, I think, honestly, he could be another unanimous MVP this season. There have been some great performances from James Harden, from LeBron James, from Luka Doncic early in the season, but there's been one player this season who's been constantly consistent, and it's been Giannis. He's been dominating the league, and you can't just say it's because he's just going down and dunking on people because he's 7 feet tall. No. Giannis has so much skill to him, has really worked on his craft. You could see it. If you watch a game of his, watch his footwork, watch his ability to get into the lane and draw double teams, kick it out too. Like, his assist numbers have grown over the years as well. So he's not just somebody that just goes and dunks on people, which I thought was just crazy that James Harden would even try to allude to that. It makes me think that once James Harden's done in his career, he'll be the next Paul Pierce, just kind of hating on everybody in the league. But Giannis pretty much responded saying he can only go out and play his game and that it didn't really bother him. And so in his first game since hearing this news, this is kind of a response game in a way, the Bucks were up against the Thunder, a very surprising team in the West. We talked about it before, a very good, formidable opponent. A lot of it has to do with the fact that they're led by Chris Paul, who is just such a great veteran presence, and that combined with the fact that he has such great skill set as well, can really run an offense and has great handles, great vision, and the ability to take over games late as well. So that's why the Thunder are really rolling as much as they are. So the Thunder are going up against the best team in the NBA in the Milwaukee Bucks. They're obviously first in the East, obviously have been pretty much untouchable this season. And so this could be a really competitive game between these two teams who are in the playoff picture right now in their respective conferences. But no, it wasn't even close. It was an absolute blowout. The Bucks would destroy the Oklahoma City Thunder 133-86. That's almost a 50-point blowout. The Bucks had a season-high 21 three-pointers, and this was their best margin of victory this season. Obviously, the worst margin to lose from for the Oklahoma City Thunder, unfortunately for them. But a lot of it had to do with the fact that Giannis completely went off. He had 32 points. He shot 65% from the field, 50% from three-point line. He had 13 boards, had 6 assists, and he was plus 44 in this game. Are you going to try and tell me that he got 32 points just straight heading to the bucket and dunking on people? James Harden, I'm talking to you. He also had 13 boards and 6 assists. He got it done all over the court. Wesley Matthews had 14 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. George Hill had 14 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists. Connaughton had 14 points too, with 4 rebounds and 3 assists. And so, looking at those numbers, those are your next highest scorers. It's really just Giannis leading the way. And on the other side, Chris Paul had 18 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists. And then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had 11 points, and then no more double-digit scoring after that. Didn't have Gallinari in this game due to an ankle injury, and so your highest scorers had 18 and 11. That just shows how good the defense of the Milwaukee Bucks is. And it's really, really difficult to try and beat them when you can only manage 88 points in an entire basketball game. So the next game up was against the Hornets, who actually put up a pretty decent fight despite being one of the weaker teams in the league at this point. And in fact, it's the first team this season to hold Milwaukee to just double-digit scoring. Milwaukee would end up winning this game 93-85, but they didn't break 100 for the first time in a long time, first time this season. But in this game, Giannis becomes the first Bucks player to have a 40-point, 20-rebound, and 5-assist game since Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on March 1974. 40-point, 20-rebound, 5 assists. He had 41 points, 20 rebounds, one shy of his career high, and 6 assists on 17 of 28 shooting. That's insane. If you're in the same conversation as Kareem, you've already done something right. That's it. But the fact that he did that 40 rebounds, 20 points. Like, that's insane. And so I just think it's furthering of a response to James Harden. Keep talking. Because clearly when you make Giannis mad, he goes out and does the unthinkable. That's a monster double-double. And for him to get 5 assists as well just shows his versatility as well. The next highest scorer was Brook Lopez with 16 points and 7 rebounds. George Hill, after that, had 11 points, 5 rebounds. He was the last player in double digits for them. Giannis carried in this game. On the other side of the ball, Devontae Graham had 17 points. Terry Rozier had 13 points. And then a few more double-digit scoring, but at the end of the day, just not enough high-volume scoring for them to try and combat this Milwaukee Bucks team that just have been so consistent this year, have been just so good. And they've only lost 8 times this season. So for them to hold the Bucks to as little points as they had in this game is an impressive feat, but you got to add some offense to that as well. And since the Bucks are one of the best defensive teams in the league, it was tough for them to get their own offense going. And so they dropped this game. Giannis, at this point, he's undeniably great. I mean, what Harden said, in my opinion, is just absolutely ridiculous. And these 2 games really speak to that fact. I mean, even if you look at his highlight tape, there's a lot of times where he's not just going and dunking on people, although his biggest highlight was against the Charlotte Hornets, where he showed off his handle a little bit. He was going down in the lane, spin moved one of his defenders, and then did dunk over a defender, which is just great to see. But his post moves, his fadeaways, it takes a lot of skill, a lot of practice. So for Harden to say that he has to practice and actually learn how to play basketball in response to what Giannis was joking about during All-Star break is just insane to me. Obviously, Giannis was joking about him not passing the ball. I'm sure that there's mutual respect between these 2 teams, but for him to get butthurt like that was kind of disappointing to see. I mean, but either way, not only the fact that Giannis is that good, he's currently leading a team to one of the best records in NBA history. They're on track to win 70 games. Not many teams in NBA history have done that. They're 52-8 right now. This Bucks team is honestly scary, and they clearly are the most consistent team in the league. And when you're led by Giannis, you don't want to make him mad because clearly he's just going to keep proving people wrong and, responding to the haters at the end of the day. Transitioning right now, the Grizzlies currently hold the last playoff spot in a very competitive Western Conference, so it has them sweating just a little bit. We take a look at their most recent results and who are chomping at the bits to kick them out.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. We just talked about how James Harden responded to Giannis saying that he'd rather have someone pass the ball on his team during All-Star break. Obviously a joke at the time. He responded saying that he didn't really appreciate that, obviously. He said, I wish I could just run and was 7 feet and could just run and dunk. Like, that takes no skill at all. I got to actually learn how to play basketball, how to have skill, I take that any day. And a quote like that implies the fact that Giannis doesn't have any skill, which is clearly not true because his last 2 games are evident of that fact. He has so many assets to his game to make him dangerous, besides just the fact that he's just a physical force. And honestly, just him being 7 feet is not enough in this league. if you look at how he came into the league as scrawny as he has, he's put on some serious weight, some serious muscle, and so that's part of it as well. That's part of a skill set too, is the workouts and getting yourself in physical shape to be as dominant as Giannis is. And most recently, he had a game where he went 40, 20 rebounds, and 5 assists. First since Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bucks player-wise, who did it in March of 1974. So Giannis has so many pieces to his game that make him dangerous, and I just can't believe that James Harden really said something like that. And now switching gears, we're going to talk about the Memphis Grizzlies. They got a big win in this very tight playoff picture. We got to talk about this Western Conference standings right now because it's absolutely insane just how close all these teams are, especially at the bottom. I mean, Memphis Grizzlies are kind of isolated right now in that 8th spot. They're 3 games up on the New Orleans Pelicans, who are right behind them. There's also the Sacramento Kings, who are 3 games behind. The San Antonio Spurs, who are 3 games behind. And then the Portland Trail Blazers, who are 3.5. So, it's a really, really tight race right now. And the Grizzlies are barely holding on. They did just hit a wall. Jaren Jackson went down injured, which is a huge blow to them. Their second, best player next to John Morant. There's a great 1-2 punch, and when you take that out, your offense and your defense really start to struggle. And so they had a 3-game stretch against the Lakers, Clippers, and Rockets where they got blown out in pretty much all of them. Only one close game within those 3. And then they had a game against the Sacramento Kings. That game against the Kings was interesting because the Kings did go up pretty big. They were performing really well. They've been obviously kind of floating around that playoff picture, but no one really expected them to make that jump and get as close as they are as of right now. And this game was very important for both teams because obviously the Kings are chasing the Grizzlies and the Grizzlies are trying to fend off anybody that's trying to take their spot. So with this win, if the Kings could win the game, they could jump a whole game instead of just a half game because obviously they're playing the Grizzlies. And John Morant led a great comeback late in this game, almost had completed it. He had a great dunk through the lane, just a monstrous dunk. But at the end of the day, De'Aaron Fox was very clutch, hit a nice runner, floater in the lane, and then it was a foul game from there. Kings ended up taking the game, and that's why they're so close in the standings as of right now. So it's deflating to lose to a team that's chasing you, that's behind you, and then to have LA up next on their schedule, you just kind of feel like you can't really catch a break. You're losing these games back to back to back. You lost one of your best players for how long, forever how long, you don't even know. And now you got the best team in the Western Conference, second best team in the league on your schedule coming up next. So that's tough to swallow when you're a team that's trying to hold on to this last playoff spot. LeBron and AD playing this, both playing in this game. This was before the Pelicans game that we talked about earlier in the podcast. Memphis ends up outscoring LA in every single quarter except for the 4th. So they really got up for this game, ended up winning it 105-88 in a much-needed win. This was huge, not only for their confidence, but in the fact of this playoff picture with 4 teams in position to take them out right now. And to win against the Los Angeles Lakers team that's only lost 13 times this season is a huge, huge statement win. And even more so looking forward, if Memphis holds on to that 8th spot and the Lakers end up still staying in that number 1 seed, these 2 teams will meet up in the playoffs. So now you can beat them, and you can beat them pretty convincingly as well when 2 of their best players are on the court. And when you don't even have Jaren Jackson Jr. as well. So very impressive win for the Memphis Grizzlies. John Morant went off in this one. At one point, he tried to end Anthony Davis's career. At the end of the day, Anthony Davis ended up drawing a charge. So foul on Morant, obviously. But this isn't the first time that he's tried this. He tried to end Kevin Love earlier in the season, too. Kevin Love showed him some love after the game on Instagram, saying like good stuff or whatever. And it just shows that John Morant has no fear. He has crazy athleticism. I mean, his balance is like, if I'm going to compare him to somebody, I would compare him to Russell Westbrook. Just his explosiveness and his ability to jump, Derrick Rose-like as well, and early on in his career. So he's got that. He's got no fear. He's got great ball handling. He's very deceptive with his ball handling. We've seen it a lot this season. And he just has a lot of tools in his arsenal that makes him such a great player. And for him to be picking up on all the things that can make him great in just his rookie year, he's going to be a scary, scary player in years to come. So like I said, they win this game. Him playing versus LeBron was huge. Obviously, he wants to step up, wants to beat LeBron, one of the up-and-coming players in the league. Very similar to how Zion probably wants to beat LeBron too. LeBron got up for those games, beat Zion both times, beat John Morant for the most part too, but in this game, obviously avoid the season sweep. And John Morant really outdid himself in this one, had 27 points, 6 rebounds, and 14 assists for a nice double-double. He was 10 of 16 from the field and 4 for 6 from three-point land. And a lot of people question his ability to shoot the ball, so for him to go 4 for 6 from deep and be as efficient as he was from the field was definitely a good sign to see. Dillon Brooks, in the absence of Jaren Jackson Jr., really had to step up, really had to be that second force on the offensive end. And he did just that in this game, had 24 points, 5 rebounds. At one point, really funny moment between him and LeBron James, he went for a strip from LeBron, ended up grazing LeBron's face, and gave LeBron an Oscar for this performance. He totally, not flopped, but he reacted as if he had just gotten smacked in the face, and he totally whipped away to sell the foul. But it was just very funny to see, one of those moments that, you know, Twitter just has a field day with, so it was pretty funny to see. Valanciunas in this one had a monster double-double, 22 points and 20 rebounds. That's a crazy stat line. Such a good performance from Valanciunas in this one. Much needed, especially against the Los Angeles Lakers team that has so much size, has so much physicality. For you to go and get 22 points and also grab 20 boards, it's impressive. Very impressive. I mean, you're going up against players like Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis when he's down there too. So very impressive performance from Valanciunas in this one. A big part of the reason why they won this game is that LeBron and AD were very quiet in terms of, you know, how they usually are in games where they just dominate opponents. In this one, LeBron led the way with 19 points, just 19 points, had 8 rebounds and 10 assists for a near triple-double. Did have a double-double in this one, obviously. Anthony Davis only had 15 points, just 15 points, 9 rebounds and 4 assists. KCP had 11 points and Kuzma had 10. So that was it for double-digit scoring. Very underwhelming performance for the Los Angeles Lakers in terms of their offense. And the Grizzlies just really wanted it more. Obviously, it meant a lot more to them to try and hold on to this 8th seed, and it's a very impressive win for their organization as a whole. A little bit of a side note, the Lakers waived Troy Daniels, who hasn't played too much for them this season, just kind of been a role player coming off the bench from time to time. But they're having Waiters work out with the team after he got waived by none other than the Memphis Grizzlies. That's Dion Waiters that we're talking about. Had great stints in Miami. And he could be a very welcomed addition if he's in good shape and good physical form right now, to bolster this bench right now. So good move from the Lakers in my opinion. Hopefully that workout works out for them. But nevertheless, this was an impressive win. Very impressive. It took a lot of a bad performance from LA, but at the end of the day, just very impressive for the Memphis Grizzlies. Like I said, this playoff picture, the team surrounding them, very important that the Memphis Grizzlies won this game. And the Kings barely lost to the Thunder the other day. They ended up beating the Grizzlies. They beat the Pistons on Sunday. So they're making a lot of headway. They've been one of the hotter teams in the NBA, kind of alluding to hot or not later. They're one of the hotter teams right now. The Pelicans, they lost to LA twice in the last 3 games, so it has been very unfortunate for them in terms of their schedule as of late. But they have Minnesota coming up next, which is a welcome sight to see on the schedule, just because Minnesota has not been playing well as of late, and they won't have Karl-Anthony Towns either, so you already know Zion Williamson is going to have a field day. The only problem for the Pelicans as of right now is that they don't have J.J. Redick. He's out for at least 2 weeks with an injury, so in their pursuit of that 8th spot, right now they're 9th, right behind the Grizzlies. not having J.J. Redick, one of your sharpshooters, is definitely a big blow. The Blazers have fallen a bit. They're even farther back than the Spurs as of right now. They're a little bit roughed up. They have a 3-game losing streak, have a couple injuries. Damian Lillard obviously not back yet, but he will be back soon. And then the Spurs are hanging around somehow. I mean, you don't really hear too much about them day to day, but they're right there, 3 games back. So this is a race for last place, and it's very exciting. It's very interesting to see how it's going to play out, but only time will tell. A game I didn't want to add on to my predictions earlier was the 76ers versus the Los Angeles Clippers, and the reason being was that the Sixers don't have 2 of their biggest stars. I thought the Clippers would absolutely roll over them, but much to my surprise, that didn't happen. We break down the game coming up next.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Isiah. Now, we just talked about the Memphis Grizzlies getting a much-needed win against the Los Angeles Lakers, a team that had only lost 13 times this season. And in a playoff picture where it's very close, Memphis Grizzlies are holding on to that last spot, that 8th place spot, with the Pelicans, the Kings, the Spurs, and the Blazers all within 3.5 games. So it's a very tight race right now. A lot of teams trying to push the Grizzlies out of there, so it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But as of right now, the Grizzlies are holding on, and to win against a team like the Lakers is very impressive, especially since if this ends up being how it shakes out, with the Lakers being number 1 and the Grizzlies being number 8, that's who you're going to see first in the playoffs. So if you're able to beat them now, you know you can beat them later, which is an impressive feat, especially since this team has LeBron and Anthony Davis on it. Now, kind of switching gears, we're going to talk about the 76ers versus the Los Angeles Clippers. And in this game, the Sixers would be without their 2 biggest stars, in Embiid and Simmons, both out with injuries. Tough blow for them. Embiid with the shoulder injury and Ben Simmons with the back injury. It's uncertain when they're going to return, but they're both going to be reevaluated within 2 weeks, I believe. So to be playing without them is already tough enough. They have one of the worst road records in the league at 9-22, which is absolutely ridiculous because they're super good at home. So I don't understand how they can leave and be as poor as they are. I mean, at home, they're 28-2. They've lost twice, but they've lost 22 times on the road and only had 9 wins. So if they're going to go deep into the playoffs, they need to find a way to win on the road. And not having Embiid, not having Simmons, and going up against the Clippers, it's not a great place to start that. But the biggest story in this game ends up being Shake Milton. You probably don't even know who that is, and I wouldn't blame you for not. I'm not going to spoil anything off the bat, but I'll give you some background. Now, Milton entered the league, eventually ended up with Philadelphia after a trade. He played a lot with the NBA G League affiliate Delaware Bluecoats for the Sixers. He made his NBA debut November 30th, 2018 against Washington Wizards. He only scored 5 points, had 2 assists in that one. As a rookie, he only played 20 games for the Sixers, averaging 4.4 points, 1.8 rebounds, 0.9 assists, and 13 minutes per game. So didn't really have a big impact, obviously, right away, since he didn't play as many games. He had career highs at 13 points when playing against Orlando in 2019. But then in the G League, he was the fourth best scorer in terms of scoring average. He had 24.9 points. Also averaged 5.2 assists and 4.8 rebounds per game in 27 contests for the Bluecoats. So he did show a lot of promise down in the G League. So before the start of the 2019-2020 season, Milton ended up signing a 4-year deal with Philadelphia. Milton has been injured a lot during the season, missed a lot of time. He made his first career start January 25th, 2020 against the Los Angeles Lakers. He had 7 points, 3 assists, and a career-high 9 rebounds. And then later that month in his third career start, he set a new career high in assists with 6 and points with 27, passing his career high 13, obviously, but this was in a loss to the Atlanta Hawks. So given all that information, we'll kind of touch upon it a little bit more later, but just a little background on who Shake Milton is. And then on the flip side, the Los Angeles Clippers had nobody hurt again, which was a pleasant change of pace for them to have a full roster, and it would turn out that they would need that full roster in this game, in a game where they probably didn't expect to need everybody. The Sixers in the first, they jumped out to a 25-11 lead. They just jumped on the Clippers, weren't really ready for it. That 14-point lead would end up being the largest of the game for the 76ers. And so the Clippers started to cut the deficit as the quarter was ending from some big buckets from Montrezl Harrell and Kawhi Leonard, but most notably from Reggie Jackson, who hit a fadeaway 3 in the corner to beat the shot clock. And also had 5 seconds left in the first quarter as well. So that would pretty much do it for that quarter. Sixers would have the lead after one, 39-34. And then Tobias Harris at this point already had 13 points, was 5 of 8 from the field, and 3 for 4 from three-point land. So this was one of the better quarters for him as of late. I've been really tough on Tobias Harris in these podcasts, saying that he hasn't really performed offensively. He's been very quiet in terms of his production offensively. And in a time where you don't have Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid, who are you going to look to? And I think it should be Tobias Harris. And so this was a really good start for him in this game. The second quarter, even more troubles hit for the 76ers, unfortunately for them. Josh Richardson suffered a bruised nose and did not return. Unfortunately for them, he had 9 points in 10 minutes, so he was being very efficient with his time out on the court. And to see him go down injured when you already have your 2 other stars down is not a welcome sight to see. Hopefully it's nothing too serious, but he will go through the concussion protocol within the next couple of days, so we'll see how that all pans out. Not to mention the fact that the momentum had kind of shifted away from them during this quarter as well. They would extend their lead out to 53-45, but then Paul George had an and-one opportunity and a three-pointer that he buried that eventually made the game tied at 55. George would later take the lead for the Clippers at last on a fadeaway jump shot, but the Sixers would not go away. And even better, they had the lead at 72-70 at halftime. That halftime was the second time that Philadelphia had scored 70-plus points by half this season. So to not have your 2 highest scorers and then Josh Richardson going down 2 was impressive. A big reason why they got to this mark was Shake Milton. You see how it's all coming together now? We talked about him earlier, like I just said. Had himself a half. He had 26 points on 10 of 11 shooting. He missed once. He was 4 for 4 from downtown. He's making the most of his opportunity when the star players are not in the game, so good on him to do so. And then going in the second half, the Clippers came out with a full head of steam, and coincidentally, Milton had kind of cooled off during this quarter. And without that, Horford led all scorers with 10, and that really just wasn't enough for the Sixers at this point. The Sixers would push out to a 7-point lead at one point, and then the Clippers flipped a switch. They went on a 24-5 run that lasted about 6 minutes, pretty much to close out the quarter in this one. The Clippers in the third shot 66.7% from the field and 71.4% from three-point land. I mean, you can't really do much with that when they're shooting that efficiently and when your top scorers aren't in the game. So the poor 76ers got outscored 38-24 in that one. And so the Clippers had a 108-96 lead heading into the fourth quarter. The Clippers would get their biggest lead of 14 with 8.5 to go, but the Sixers weren't done yet, which I thought was very impressive. They had a never say die attitude to them in this game. Milton hit a deep three to bring the game within 4 with less than 4 to play. Later, Tobias Harris would do the same, bringing them within 4 on an and one dunk with 1.5 to go. But that's as close as they would get. The Clippers would extend the lead and hold on to it, winning 136 to 130. But an impressive game, I think, in my opinion, from the 76ers. I counted them out early. I'm sure most of the NBA counted them out. Didn't have 2 of their biggest superstars, and the Clippers had everyone healthy for once, which was crazy. The Clippers had 4 players score at least 24 points for only the second time ever in franchise history. Also, they have a league-leading 12th game now with at least 130 points scored. So they lead the league in scoring over 130 points, and this was their 12th game doing so. Kawhi Leonard in this one had 30 points, had 6 rebounds and 3 assists. Paul George had 24 points, 4 assists. Lou Williams had 24 points, 2 rebounds, 8 assists. I've noticed he gets a lot of assists, even coming off the bench. And then Montrezl Harrell had 24 points and 9 assists. So those are your 4 players that were over 24, only for the second time in franchise history. Very impressive stuff. Reggie Jackson continued his last performance, played well in this one. 13 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists with 2 blocks. And then Marcus Morris, also a recent addition to this team, had 9 points in this one. The big story, though, is Milton. He had a great game. He made his first 5 3-pointers in this one, and at one point had made 13 straight 3-pointers over a 3-game period. And he tied Brent Price and Terry Mills for the most consecutive threes made in NBA history, which is crazy to think of because he was mostly a G League player up until this point. He ended with a career-high 39 points, 3 rebounds, and 5 assists. He shot 70% from the field and 77.8% from three-point land. Have yourself a game, Shake Milton. Congratulations on that. That's phenomenal, really. For a team that don't have their 2 biggest superstars, have Josh Richardson go down. He made the most of his appearance against one of the best teams in the NBA, one of the best defensive teams in the NBA once they're all healthy and together. I'm sure they're going to be an all-defensive team. And for him to do that, come in and perform, I hope he can build on it. I hope this isn't just a one-game Linsanity type of deal, but only time will tell. Tobias Harris in this one, he played really well. 25 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. Alec Burks, another recent addition for the 76ers, came from the Golden State Warriors, played pretty well in this one. Good contribution, 15 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. And then Al Horford, 12 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists with a steal and 2 blocks. So at the end of the day, it's another loss on the road, but in a lot of ways, it's a promising one because there are a lot of positives to take from this game and things they can work on and improve on once their star players get back. I think this is a good sign for the Sixers moving forward, in my opinion. They're still a half a game above the Pacers, which is good. They're still in 5th place in the Eastern Conference, so nothing's changed there, which is a good sign for them. Shake Milton on an absolute tear tonight. Great story from him. Would be crazy if he can keep that going, especially in the absence of their biggest stars. But another player that's been on fire as of late is Bradley Beal. Man got left off of the All-Star team and has been showing the league they made a mistake. We check out his latest games as well as an impressive game from Porzingis as well, coming up next.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. We just talked about the Los Angeles Clippers facing the Philadelphia 76ers, and the reason why I didn't want to talk about this game beforehand is because I thought it was going to be an absolute blowout. The 76ers are without Ben Simmons and without Joel Embiid, both out due to injury. But the big story being Shake Milton. Shake Milton was a G League player last year. Signed an extension with the Sixers, had been injured for most of the season this year, and with their two biggest stars out, with Josh Richardson going down in this game, he went out and scored a career-high 39 points. He went off, had the highest amount of points throughout the whole game, even for the Clippers too. So the Clippers were tested a little bit more than they had expected to have been tested, only won by 6 points, but a great story for Milton. Hopefully he can continue that. And it was a really impressive performance. And switching gears, we're going to talk about another impressive player in the league, in Bradley Beal. Let's do a little bit of a recap. He didn't make the All-Star team back in February because he just was on a very losing team in the Washington Wizards. Just not an impressive team. And honestly, probably the biggest snub of the All-Star game, other than Devin Booker, because both of these two are offensive threats, probably one of the biggest offensive threats in the NBA as of right now. But I think the reason being is that the Wizards had a losing record, and then players like Middleton gets in because the Bucks obviously are the most dominating team in the league, so you need more representation from that team. So he got snubbed, and since being snubbed on January 30th, he's averaged 36 points per game. That's insane. That's insane. That's what James Harden has been averaging for most of the season. 36 points. He's set a franchise record for the most games with at least 25 points at 18 straight games. So he has been doing this consistently for a while now. He has set career highs as of late, like recently. Back-to-back nights, he had a game where he had 53 points. And then the next game after that, he had 55 points. And both of those games, he lost. How do you score 53 points? And better yet, how do you score 55 points and then you lose? That's just your team letting you down. That's unfortunate for him. One of those games being against the Milwaukee Bucks. He scored 55 against the Bucks, and they lost by 3 points. This is the Washington Wizards. The coach of the Washington Wizards, Scott Brooks, had this to say. He said, quote, "He's been pretty good ever since I've been here. 4 years now, he's gotten better." We all know what happened in terms of talking about him being snubbed. Unfortunately, he didn't get it, but the players voted him second. That says a lot. The coaches, we think we know it all. We think we see it all. But the players know it. They know. He's impossible to guard. He's one of the elite scorers. Right now, there's James Harden. He's the only one scoring more points than him. He's really efficient. Can you imagine if he was an all-star, what he'd be doing right now? And so it's always nice to have your coach backing you up. Of course, he's been proving it throughout the league. But to have that backing, that support from your coach is a great sign to see. And it's everything he's saying is completely true. Bradley Beal even spoke on it as well. He said, quote, "Honestly, I could care less about how I'm playing as long as we're winning. Because my career highs and those good games, what is the record? We're 1-9 when I score 40 or something. That's terrible. I'm not happy about that. I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh yeah, but I scored 40. No, we got to win, and that's what I'm about. You definitely want to leave your mark." Talking about his scoring streak. If records happen along the journey, those are great accolades. I'm definitely humbled and honored by them, but they don't motivate me to go out there and do what I do. I play for a higher purpose, more so than accolades. End quote. And so even though amidst all this domination that he's been doing within the last couple games, ever since he's been snubbed from the All-Star game, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to him unless he gets team wins. And unfortunately for him, he's on a Washington Wizards team that has a lot of injuries, doesn't have their star player in John Wall, and so they've fallen off a lot. And even though he's had such great performances, has been so dominant within the league, it gets overshadowed by the fact that they just can't win games. They've only won 22 games this season and lost 37, so it's been a tough year for the Washington Wizards. But he would eventually get that win that he's been looking for, most recently against a depleted Golden State Warriors roster. They had 8 available players in this game that was supposed to have Stephen Curry early on in the week, saying that this would be the game that he comes back from injury. He broke his hand early on in the season, only had played 4 games so far. And he was supposed to come back for this game, but Steve Kerr pumped the brakes, said, nope, we want to get you some more scrimmage time. Make sure that you're 100. Make sure that you're physically in shape to be able to handle the workload of an NBA game. So much to Curry's disappointment, he didn't play in this one. Wiggins would be leading the way. Eric Pascal is a great rookie for the Warriors, as well as Jordan Poole. And the Marquise Chris as well has been making a case to be the center even when the star players come back. He's been playing some inspired basketball with some players that, are in and out of the roster on 10-day contracts, G League affiliate players. And he's still performing really well. So the Wizards would end up winning this game, though, 124-110, with Beal scoring 34 in this one, along with 8 assists and 5 steals. He went 7-9 from downtown. So extremely efficient from the three-point land. And then Bertans as well was a flamethrower in this one at 29 points, going 8 for 10 from three-point land. Both of them scoring at will. And the Wizards are actually 4 games behind the Brooklyn Nets for the last playoff spot, which seems so improbable at this point. But given how bad the bottom of the Eastern Conference is, anything is possible, really. So somehow the Washington Wizards that have such a poor record and such a poor winning percentage, they could still potentially make it in. With the Brooklyn Nets falling right now, they're on a 4-game losing streak, so who knows? The Wizards could potentially sneak in there. But now switching gears a little bit, we're going to talk about Porzingis. He had a very impressive night in his own right. The Mavericks were up against the Timberwolves without Karl-Anthony Towns, who has a fractured left wrist, so not a great opponent. Obviously, they're the second worst team in the Western Conference, but nevertheless, they're an NBA team, so you got to go out and perform. The Mavs, in their own right, wouldn't have Luka Doncic because of that thumb injury that we talked about early on in the podcast. He sat out this game. So, obviously, with him sitting out, you knew it was going to be Porzingis' show. And that's exactly what ended up happening. In this game, the Mavericks would win easily, 111-91, and Porzingis would post a stat line of 38 points, 13 rebounds, and 4 assists, with 5 blocks. Porzingis joins Dirk Nowitzki as the only players in Mavericks history to post a 35-point, 10-rebound, and 5-block stat line. That's a huge deal. I don't want to overhype it, but I think in a lot of ways that's a really big deal. Dirk Nowitzki is one of the greatest players of all time, obviously the greatest Maverick player of all time, the greatest foreign player of all time. So there's a lot of parallels here that Porzingis can apply himself to if he wants to be one of those greats. And he has all the tools to do so. He's got obviously the size, the ability at such a height to be able to dribble and drive into the lane, shoot from deep. I mean, he's got the three-point ball as well, got good fadeaways. He's got all the tools necessary, and for him to be in the same kind of conversation as Dirk Nowitzki, him and Nowitzki being the only 2 players to have posted a stat line like this, I think is a big deal in a lot of ways. So, very impressive performance from Porzingis in this one. Also, Seth Curry, he started to raise some eyebrows. We talked about it earlier on in the podcast that he went off, had the most points in the game with 37 earlier. But in this one, he had 27 points on 11 of 17 shooting. So he's continuing his ability to get on the score sheet, especially with Luka Doncic out. making the most of his opportunity and doing so efficiently as well, 11 for 17. So I really want to see if Seth Curry can continue doing this, can do it consistently, because there have been times where he'll go off for a bunch of points and then he'll kind of fall off for the next couple games. So if he can do it at a consistent level, really push his way into this starting lineup as well, I think it'd be a really good move for him and just show that he belongs in this league, which he does, no doubt about that. But I want to see him be one of the more elite stars in the league. Get up there with your brother, Seth. Beat out Stephen Curry. D'Lo led the Wolves with 16 points. That's it. Highest scorer with 16 points. So kind of sad day for the Timberwolves, but great performance from Porzingis. Getting matched up with Dirk Nowitzki, always a good sign to see. Coming up, we wrap up the show with who's hot and who's not, so stay with us.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. So which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. We just talked about how Bradley Beal, ever since being snubbed from the All-Star game, has been going on an absolute tear. He's been playing so well as of late. He's been averaging 36 points since being snubbed on January 30th. He's scored at least 25 points in the last 18 straight games, which is a new franchise record for the Washington Wizards. He also has posted career highs in back-to-back games, with somewhat recently scoring 53 and then scoring 55. Both games ending up in losses, but he's still playing really well. And then Porzingis as well posted a crazy stat line against the Minnesota Timberwolves, had 38 points, 13 boards, 4 rebounds with 5 blocks. And him and Dirk Nowitzki are the only players in Mavericks history to post 35 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 blocks. So great place to be if you're Porzingis. That's the kind of parallels you want to make. Nowitzki should be that person he chases, because Nowitzki is one of the greats, and he's one of the best foreign greats, best, tall greats to do it, and Porzingis can draw a lot of parallels to his game and apply them to his own as well. But moving forward now, we're going to talk about who's hot and who's not, and we're going to start with who's hot. Coming in at number 5 are the Sacramento Kings. And a lot of people might disagree with me with this, but you're wrong, because they are one of the hotter teams in the league right now. They're in 10th place. They're in that playoff picture. They're only behind the Pelicans, but they're tied with them from a record standpoint. Right behind the Grizzlies, could potentially be the ones to push them out. They're on a 2-game win streak. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games. And like I said, all of a sudden they're in that playoff picture. They're right there. They barely lost to an Oklahoma City Thunder team that's very good, even though they did get destroyed by the Bucks. But that doesn't mean too much, because the Thunder have generally been pretty consistent this season. They also beat the Grizzlies twice. They fought back from 21 points down to Detroit. Okay, yeah, being down 21 to Detroit, not a good sign. But the fact that they came back and won the game is impressive. They also beat the Clippers somewhat recently as well. So I think the Sacramento team has a lot of promise to them. De'Aaron Fox is legit. He's been playing through a lot of injuries as of late. Just a lot of different, body aches or what have you, but he's been playing really great in this last couple months. Buddy Hield as well, since moving to the bench, they've been fantastic. His ability to lead the second unit and just be a great scoring output coming off the bench has been a much-needed help to their offense. Also, Alex Len coming in from a trade, just being that workhorse, that guy that's getting them extra possessions and just working hard down low, as well as Harry Giles moving into that center spot, getting full minutes now that Rashawn Holmes has been injured for as long as he has. So this team has a lot going for them right now. That's why they're number 5 in my list. And I would not be surprised if they're the ones that end up in that 8th spot. It's going to be them or the Pelicans. I don't think the Grizzlies will hold on. Coming in at number 4, the Los Angeles Lakers. They're obviously first in the Western Conference still, but they're only on a 1-game win streak because they just lost to the Grizzlies the other night. But they're 8-2 in their last 10. LeBron is playing some inspired basketball. He's been dominating again. And it's led to a lot of LeBron stans getting mad that he's not being highly considered for the MVP. But let's be honest. I mean, it's Giannis or broke. So he's going to win the MVP. There's no discussion about it because of just how dominant he's been, because he's on the best team in the NBA right now. End of that discussion. But before losing to the Grizzlies a couple games ago, they were on a 7-game win streak. During that time, beating the Pelicans, the Grizzlies, the Nuggets, the Celtics. Those are big opponents, and they're very, very consistent. Whether they're at home, whether they're away, they've been one of the best teams in the NBA. So I didn't mean to make that rhyme, but on a happy accident. So they're number 4 on my list. And then coming in at number 3, that other team from LA, the Los Angeles Clippers. They're on a 4-game win streak, and even better yet, they're finally healthy. That's the biggest thing for me, is that they're finally healthy. They beat the Grizzlies. They beat the Nuggets and the Sixers. They actually destroyed the Nuggets, who, they're fighting with for that 2nd seed, like it talks about as well early on. But my biggest question mark for them is, can they be consistent? Because this team has been extremely inconsistent all season long, but largely due to the fact that they never have a consistent roster. So now that they're healthy, can they make that turn from being a pretty good team in the West to being a great team, maybe the best team in the Western Conference now? They've shown flashes throughout the season that would allude to the fact that they can be the best team in the NBA, but they just haven't shown it on a consistent basis. And so at this point, that's what I'm expecting from them. And because of the fact that they're healthy, they're on a 4-game win streak. That's why they're number 3 on my list. Coming in at number 2 are the Milwaukee Bucks. They're on a 6-game win streak. They're 9-1 in their last 10, and they were on a 5-game win streak before losing to the Pacers. But now that they're on a 6-game losing streak, or a 6-game winning streak, it just shows how consistent they are. I mean, losing only 8 times in an entire year so far is crazy. They're on track to win 70 games. Not many teams can say that they can do that. They also, during this time, beat the Sixers, the Raptors, the Thunder by almost 50, let me remind you. And Giannis continuously seems to get better. It's actually kind of scary just how good this guy is, because he has so many tools in his arsenal to beat you. Whether or not you want to double team him, he'll find somebody open. Whether or not you want to go 1v1 and give him the lane, he's going to go down there and dunk on you. You want to give him some space, let him shoot the 3? He learned how to shoot. He's starting to shoot 3s now. So, honestly, we might as well just give the trophy to the Milwaukee Bucks now. They're just so, so good. Also, the fact that he's posted a stat line of 40, 20, and 5 is pretty crazy. First Bucks player since Kareem, so insane. Coming in at number 1, though, are the Houston Rockets. They're on a 6-game win streak. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They're undefeated since All-Star break. And during this win streak, they have beaten the Celtics twice, the Grizzlies, and the Jazz. Those are impressive teams to beat. I mean, the Boston Celtics, they're a team that I could picture going to the Eastern Conference Finals and maybe even the Finals if somehow they beat the Bucks. To me, they're one of the top 4 teams in the NBA. So to beat them twice, very impressive. The Grizzlies as well, even though they don't have Jaren Jackson Jr., they've been a very formidable opponent all season long. And even though the Jazz haven't been very consistent as of late, they're still one of the top teams in the West too. So a lot of this is due to the fact that there are impressive performances from Westbrook mostly, who's just thriving in the small ball lineup. He's playing as efficiently as I've ever known him as a player. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he doesn't feel forced to take 3-pointers. The lane is wide open because there's no true center on that team. So it just opens up a lot of space for him to use his athleticism to his advantage and go into the lane, drive, pull up from mid-range, which he's a lot more efficient at shooting rather than from three-point land. Also, Covington, since coming into this, he's been really big. He's been playing some pretty big minutes and being very effective, not only offensively, but defensively as well. And then obviously you got James Harden on your team. You're a pretty great team. So if they can keep that going, it's a good sign for the Houston Rockets moving forward. Some honorable mentions to name real quick. The Nuggets, in my opinion, are pretty slept on, really. I mean, they don't have a win streak going on right now because they just got smacked by the Clippers, but they're 7-3 in their last 10, and they're still second in the West. They've been very consistent this season, but they don't get a lot of love, so I'm going to give them some love in this honorable mention. Also, the Pacers on a 3-game win streak, but only notably beating Portland during this streak. But they're kind of starting to turn things around a bit. The Celtics have been pretty hot too, but have lost a couple of big games lately in terms of losing to the Lakers, losing to the Rockets. So these are the moments where they need to really test themselves, really look in the mirror and see if they can beat these bigger teams. Because at the end of the day, if you can't beat them now, how are you going to beat them in the playoffs? And so they should really start looking at that. But that does it for who's hot. We're going to move over to who's not hot in the NBA right now. Coming in at number 5 are the Portland Trail Blazers. They are on a 3-game losing streak. They're 3-7 in their last 10. They've fallen off in the playoff race. Although they are still 3.5 back, they're slipping because they were the team that was right there, right behind the Grizzlies, but now they have 3 other teams in front of them now in the Spurs, the Pelicans, and the Kings. So not a good sign for them. But the most important thing is that they are getting Lillard back soon. They could be getting Nurkic back this month. So if you want to save the season, you got to start getting results right now. If you start gaining that momentum right now, with players like Lillard and Nurkic coming back into the lineup, then you could be a dangerous team in this playoff picture again. But until they do so, they're on the who's not hot list. Coming in at number 4 is Detroit, who are 2-8 in their last 10. They just lost to the Kings and blew a 21-point lead, so that's not a good sign for them. They're a team that blew up their team. Blake Griffin's been hurt pretty much all year. They traded Andre Drummond. They bought out Reggie Jackson. And their best player right now is Derrick Rose. But unfortunately for them, he turned his ankle over on De'Aaron Fox's foot in the game against the Kings today. So he left the game, did not return. I'm sure there are x-rays happening, and we'll know for sure how long he'll be out pretty soon. But it's not looking good. He could barely walk off during this game. So unfortunate for them. They haven't had that much of a tough schedule, really, as of late, other than the Bucks and the Nuggets. But they have Thunder coming up next, so they have a tough game on their schedule right now. Coming up at number 3 is the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are 2-8 in their last 10. They're on a 2-game losing streak, and they don't have Karl Anthony Towns right now. D'Lo is leading your team. Yikes. He's a great offensive player, don't get me wrong, but he does not play defense, and I don't think can lead a team. I mean, he played really well with the Brooklyn Nets when he was carrying them a little bit, but for a team like the Timberwolves, who are as bad as they are right now, it's only going to get worse. It really is. They lost to the Magic recently, who are not good. 136-125, so no defense being played in that game at all. And they have had a pretty tough schedule as of late, so give them some benefit of the doubt. But somehow they beat the Heat somewhat recently, which I thought was shocking. But I don't see it getting better, honestly. They got the Pelicans and Zion coming up next, so that'll be a tough game for them. Coming in at number 2 are the Golden State Warriors. They're 1-9 in their last 10. They just beat the Suns, so not bad. I mean, you got a victory. Congratulations. But they lost to the Washington Wizards, who are not a good team either. Also lost to Pelicans and Lakers within the last 6 games. So their team is extremely depleted right now. They are going to get Stephen Curry back at some point during this month, probably soon. But at the end of the day, they're going for that lottery pick, I think, in my opinion. And then coming in at number 1 on who's not hot right now in the NBA, Chicago Bulls. They're 1-9 in their last 10. They're on a 2-game losing streak. They lost by 10 to the New York Knicks. They lost to the Suns, the Hornets, the Wizards, and they are so injury-plagued right now. It's crazy. Levine is day-to-day. Otto Porter Jr. is out. Lauri Markkanen is out. Wendell Carter Jr. is out. And Kobe White is out. So it's tough right now for them to try and be competitive at all when most of their players are injured. And, yeah, they're just – the Chicago Bulls are just struggling. They're the most, cold team right now in the NBA. Some honorable mentions. Got to say the Suns, they're on a 3-game losing streak. The Brooklyn Nets on a 4-game losing streak. The Cavs are on a 2-game losing streak, but 4-6 in their last 10, so not too bad. And then the Raptors, they're on a 3-game losing streak. What happened to them? They got destroyed by the Bucks, then lost to the Hornets and the Nuggets. So I don't know what really happened because they were on a crazy win streak at one point. And they've kind of just nosedive after losing to the Bucks. They didn't know what to do with themselves. I'm sure that won't last for too long, though. Just had to shout that out real quick because they do have one of the worst losing streaks as of right now. But that's going to do it for Who's Hot and Who's Not. Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show. Write a nice review. I would really appreciate it. That helps us out a lot. Also, if you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm mostly active on Twitter, trying to give you guys the updates on whatever's happening in the NBA from day to day. So go give us a follow on there at GSMC Basketball Podcast. I would greatly appreciate that. I'm Isiah Quiroz. Thank you guys, and see you next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.